presentations. And I'm going to start with you, Jose, because I know it's late over there. One of the concerns that I raised early on for the event was the intersection of nuclear weapons, autonomous weapon systems, and AI at their hands of authoritarian regimes, dictators, or democracies that have an issue. And I want to see what your thoughts on that are and how far away from that becoming a reality is it?
Yeah, first of all, I want to just one piece of the premise. I will say, and in support of what a lot of other folks said, I do think the United States is an authoritarian regime and a police state already, and always has been, since chattel slavery and also after that. But so I think that we already have that if the United States has it. Right, that's the problem. And the argument that the Pentagon is making, because they are engaging in a lot of experimentation with this, as are a lot of other countries, regardless of if those countries are more authoritarian or more warmongering of the United States, which I think it's a very tough competition, but they're all trying to test this, right? And so what they want to do, they want to claim is that these have to be split-second decisions, that these decisions, then you need to take humanity out of it, you need to take slowness out of it, that if we are under attack, that we need to be able to launch attacks right back. And it is, the security flaws by security analysts suggest that this is not something that is ever going to be ready, and certainly is not ready yet for showtime. But it's also incredibly frightening that they would put very powerful weapons, whether they're nuclear. I mean, a lot of the weapons that they're thinking about putting in the hands of so-called AI, really algorithms, to make those split-second decisions where a human doesn't have to be there to corroborate, a human doesn't have to be there to do oversight. Those are 500-pound bombs. Those are 1,000-pound bombs. Those are drone strikes that may do double taps, and that's scary enough. But the Pentagon is working on this. They've been working on this for over a decade in earnest, at least through information that we have, and they are not yet there. No matter how much they try to bluster and make claims about the possibility of AI systems, they are not yet there. And when they are actually used, that's probably the first time that we will find out about them, unless we have, some Daniel Ellsberg level of leak or whistleblowing that comes out. But we're not there yet, and it's scary enough as it is.
Yeah. One thing that I want to make a remark on is the fact that, authoritarian regimes like North Korea and Iran, and even in Pakistan, they don't have food, they don't have water, but they feel that nuclear technology is a right. And every time that there's a nuclear technology, there's nuclear waste that's produced and that people have to deal with. Iranians are starving in the streets and can't get water in the cities and can't get power, yet they're spending millions and millions of dollars on nuclear technology. A lot of this is just misguided investments. And I think there's two sides to this. There's the side of the media that always portrays that there's an enemy and there's going to be a need for violence. And that's across the globe, but across all these countries where the media portrays the need for war. They bring in the war journalists. Every time they do analysis, they bring in the generals to talk about, the shaping of the battlefield. And then you have Hollywood. And it doesn't matter if it's Hollywood or if India's Bollywood or if it's in Iran or elsewhere. They create media to feed the military with soldiers, making these people look brave on how great they are, and they feed the machine. And then, of course, you have the techies who sit in the background and create the bombs and the technology. And of course, Big Tech Sells War.com is a great site to just figure out how big tech influences the war machine. So I just want to put that out there for you.
Can I just quickly respond? I think it's useful for people to try to think about these things in a long game, because what we find, if you really look at this stuff for long enough, you'll see that they militarize the border every single year under every president since the mid-90s. And the reason has always changed, right? Whether it is the Soviet Union initially, later on, they will figure out some kind of thing in the drug war, and they will say it's drug smugglers, and they will simply militarize it more. And when they end the drug war, or when they pull back on their rationales for securitizing and militarizing the border. They then will say, it was 9/11, so there are terrorists at the border. When they pull back on claiming that it's terrorists, they will switch to human smugglers without data in many cases, and they will, tell heart-wrenching stories. And every single step of the way, there's more reason to give weapons of war to the border or to increase the weapons of war in the militaries. Whether or not these actual rationalizations are based on data, whether there is any consistent rationalization, they'll always find an excuse.
Yes. Yes, unfortunately, that is the case. Norman Solomon and Mr. Tanamori, I got a couple of questions for you. You talked about, the peace initiative in terms of peace movement, Norman, as to what's needed in our society today to go against the military and the media and the people that create the need for wars and weapons. How do we do that? How do we organize, Norman? How do we organize, Jose? How do we get the message of Mr. Tanamori out that we can forgive and we can move beyond the need for war?
Well, organizing is much more difficult than writing books. I write books. When I organize, it's more difficult. And the messaging from mass media is go out and buy things and maybe vote once in a while. And we're encouraged usually by omission that we can't do much else. And so it's a true political counterculture to sustain and increase infrastructure and organizing and so forth to say, we have to do this from the bottom up. And so not to be flip about it, but the way we do it is we do it. We organize and we utilize our resources and relationships. And I think that we need to be more nonviolently confrontational. We're too damn nice to members of Congress. Everybody in the United States is near congressional district offices. There's a culture, including among progressives, to just be very deferential to members of Congress, particularly the ones who do some good things. If they do some good things, they're not particularly doing us a favor. But when it comes to militarism, we have almost the entire Congress on the war train. And so why are we so deferential? Why don't we organize picket lines? Why don't we do nonviolent confrontation for these folks who are approving a Pentagon budget upward of $150 billion a year, which doesn't include nuclear weapons? And then we're scratching our heads or encouraged to scratch our heads. Why don't these other countries stop doing these awful things? Well, the message, do as we say, not as we do, has never been persuasive. The United States preaches about how other countries should do exactly what the United States doesn't do, like invade other countries, develop nuclear weapons, and all the rest of it. So, it gets down to the nuts and bolts. It gets down to every day, what do we do? How do we sustain organizing groups? How do we create new ones? And, let's do it.
Sounds great, Norman. I got a big bullhorn. It's as you can tell, I'm 6'4" like you are, but the bullhorn is about a third of my size, so it comes up to my knees. So you let me know where I gotta show up with my bullhorn and I'll be there.
Let's hear it for big bullhorns.
Yeah.